Lila sat at the edge of her couch with her phone in her hand, staring at the message on the screen longer than necessary. It was a simple invitation, nothing fancy. Just a short note from her friend Aaron saying he was hosting a small dinner at his place over the weekend. Normally, she would have replied right away. She liked seeing him and the small circle of people who usually came. They were warm, respectful, and easy to talk to. But this time, something held her back. And she read the message again and again until her eyes started to blur. The problem wasn't the dinner. The problem was that it had been a rough week for her. She had no babysitter for her son Rowan. He was 8, full of energy, curious about everything and always asking questions. Lila never minded that, but she also knew not everyone had patience for a child who liked to talk more than most adults. She placed the phone on her lap and leaned back, feeling her thoughts twist around each other. Should she ask Aaron if she could bring Rowan? Was that rude? Would it make him feel awkward? She didn't want to bring any trouble to his gathering. The last thing she wanted was to show up and feel out of place, or to make Rowan feel unwelcome. She glanced at her son playing quietly with his toy, the cars on the rug. He made soft engine noises under his breath, creating tiny races only he understood. His hair was messy from school, and his shirt had a small paint stain on the side from an art project earlier that day. When he looked up and caught her watching, he gave her a smile so warm that it eased a small part of her worry.
What's wrong, Mom?
He asked. Nothing, sweetheart, she said softly. She didn't want him to see her stress. She wanted him to feel loved, secure, and included in her world. But sometimes the world of adults felt like a place where children were only allowed if they asked politely, and didn't make too much noise. She picked up the phone again, unlocked it, and opened Aaron's message. She breathed in slowly, trying to gather the courage she needed to type the question. It felt silly. It was just a dinner invitation. But Lila had lived enough life to know that not everyone welcomed kids in their spaces, especially when the atmosphere was meant to be calm and grown-up. She typed, I'd love to come, but may I bring my son? I don't have anyone to watch him. It's totally fine if not. I understand. She stared at the message for a few seconds before pressing send. Her stomach tightened the moment her thumb tapped the screen. She wished she could pull the message back, tuck it away, pretend she hadn't sent it. But it was done now. The question was out there. All she could do was wait. Waiting always made Lila overthink. She knew it, but she couldn't stop her mind from drifting toward all the possible answers Aaron might give. She imagined him hesitating, trying to find polite words to decline. She imagined him saying yes, but feeling annoyed about it. She imagined awkwardness, feeling like she had forced her way into a space not meant for her child. She didn't want Rowan to feel like a burden. She never wanted that. Minutes passed, though to her they felt much longer. She tapped her finger on her knee, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft sound of Rowan pushing a toy truck across the floor. Then the phone buzzed. Her heart jumped. She reached for it, her breath caught halfway. Aaron had replied, but she didn't open the message right away. Instead, she closed her eyes for a moment, grounding herself. Her chest felt tight, but she forced herself to slowly breathe out before tapping the screen. Of course you can bring him. Actually, I've been wanting to meet him for a long time. Tell him he's welcome. Lila blinked. She read the message again, unsure if she had misunderstood it, but it was clear and warm. There was no hesitation, no hint of discomfort. No sign that he was saying yes, just to be polite. She felt something loosen inside her, like a knot finally easing. Thank you, she wrote back, keeping her words simple, even though she felt like saying more. Rowan looked up again when he saw her smiling. What happened? We're going to a dinner this weekend, she said, and you're coming with me. His eyes widened with excitement. Really, like with your friends? Yes. He jumped up from the floor. Do I have to wear boring clothes? She laughed for the first time that day. We'll find something nice and comfortable. Nothing boring. He seemed satisfied with that answer and went back to playing, now making louder engine noises like he was celebrating. Lila stood and walked to the kitchen sink. She let the water run over her hands, the warmth grounding her. She still felt nervous about the dinner. But at least the biggest fear she had, the fear of being told no, was gone. She rinsed a glass, filled it with water, and took a slow sip. The kitchen window looked out to the apartment courtyard where a couple of neighbors chatted by the entrance doors. She watched them for a moment, thinking about how often she had avoided gatherings or said no to invitations simply because she didn't want to inconvenience anyone with her son's presence. Being a single mother wasn't something she had planned, but it had become something she carried with both pride and worry. Pride because she loved her child fiercely, and worried because she didn't want the world to treat him like an inconvenience. Later that evening, after Rowan had gone to bed, she sat at her small dining table with her journal open but untouched. Sometimes writing helped calm her nerves, helped her sort through her feelings. But tonight, she didn't know what to write. She only knew she felt lighter than she had earlier. She thought about the dinner. She wondered how Rowan would behave. She wondered if he would enjoy the food or if he would stare awkwardly at the adults. She wondered if the others would be kind to him or if she would need to stand close to him the whole night. Mostly, she wondered what Aaron meant when he said he had been wanting to meet Rowan. She had known him for years, but their conversations rarely went beyond work, life, routines, and the occasional personal story. She had never really talked about her son in much detail, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't want to bore people with stories only a mother found interesting. Still, his words stayed with her. They felt genuine. The next day, she picked out an outfit for Rowan clean. Simple, but still playful and comfortable. She washed it, dried it, and folded it neatly on his dresser. He came into the room as she was doing it. "Is that for the dinner?" he asked. "Yes. Do you think they'll like me?" Her chest grew warm at his question. She knelt down so her eyes met his. "They will like you just the way you are." "What if I say something weird?" She smiled gently. "Everyone says weird things sometimes. It's okay." That answer seemed to calm him because he nodded, then ran off to play again. The days passed slowly, but filled with small moments of preparation. Lila cleaned their apartment, not because anyone would see it, but because she wanted to feel organized. She planned out what time they would leave, made sure Rowan's shoes fit well, and even practiced polite greetings with him, which always ended with him giggling. When the weekend finally arrived, Lila felt a mix of excitement and worry. But she reminded herself that Rowan was welcomed, that he wasn't being added as an afterthought or tolerated out of politeness. He had been invited with real warmth. On the afternoon of the dinner, she helped him get ready. He stood still while she brushed his hair, though he complained that it tickled. "You look very handsome," she told him. "I look normal," he replied with a shrug. She couldn't help but smile as they stood by the door. Shoes on, coats zipped, Rowan looked up at her with bright eyes. "Are you nervous, Mom?" Lila exhaled softly. "A little." "Are you?" He nodded. "A little." She held his hand. "We'll go together. It'll be fine." And with that, they stepped out into the cool evening air, not knowing what the night would bring, but feeling just brave enough to see it through. The day of the dinner arrived faster than Lila expected. She woke up early not because she needed to, but because her mind was already awake and full of thoughts. She lay in bed for a moment, watching the dim morning light creep into the room, and tried to calm her nerves. She reminded herself that everything would be okay. Rowan was excited. Aaron had been welcoming, and there was no reason for her to worry so much. But knowing that didn't make all the worry disappear, she got up quietly so she wouldn't wake Rowan. He slept, curled up on his side, hugging a pillow, his face relaxed and peaceful. She smiled softly at the sight before going to the kitchen to start breakfast. The sound of eggs frying and the smell of toast slowly filled the small apartment. Soon Rowan wandered out of his room, rubbing his eyes and yawning. "Good morning, Mom," he said sleepily. "Morning, sweetheart," she replied. "Did you sleep well?" He nodded and climbed onto the chair at the table. "Are we going today?" "To the dinner?" "Yes," she said. "Later this evening?" "We have plenty of time." Rowan looked excited but also nervous, like he couldn't decide which feeling to lean into. Lila understood that. She felt the same way. After breakfast, She let him watch a little television while she cleaned the house, not because anyone was coming over, but because it helped her relax. She folded laundry, dusted shelves, and even rearranged a few picture frames. Every now and then, she paused and imagined how the evening might go. Rowan meeting everyone, his shy smile, his endless questions. She wondered if he would feel comfortable or if he would cling to her side the whole time as the afternoon approached. Rowan followed her into the bedroom. "What if I forget how to talk to people?" he asked. She laughed gently. "You won't forget. Just be yourself. That's enough." "What if they think I'm annoying?" Lila felt a pang in her chest. No one will think that. And if someone does, that says more about them than about you. She brushed his hair lightly. "You're kind. You're curious?" "That's not annoying." He took in her words and nodded, though she could tell he was still unsure. In the late afternoon, she started getting them ready. She dressed him in the clothes she had prepared. He looked at himself in the mirror and frowned at the way his shirt sat on his shoulders. "It feels itchy," he complained. "I know," she said. "But just for tonight, okay? After dinner, you can change back into your comfy clothes." He nodded reluctantly. She got herself ready too, choosing something simple and neat. Nothing too fancy, but something that made her feel confident. She tied her hair back, added a touch of makeup, and took a deep breath. When they stood at the door, ready to leave, Rowan held her hand tighter than usual. "Mom?" "Yes. If I get scared, can I stay next to you the whole time?" "Of course," she said. "You can stay with me as much as you want." The ride to Aaron's place was quiet. Rowan looked out the window, watching the city pass by. Lila kept glancing at him, making sure he wasn't too overwhelmed. He seemed deep in thought, maybe imagining what the dinner would be like. When they reached the building, Lila felt her heart pick up speed. She wasn't sure why she was so anxious. Maybe she cared too much about what people thought. Maybe she was tired of pretending everything was always easy. Or maybe the idea of mixing her world as a mother with her world as an adult made her feel more exposed than she liked. Aaron lived in a tall apartment building with warm lighting and plants in the hallway. Rowan looked impressed as the elevator carried them upward. "This place is big," he whispered. "It is," she agreed. They stepped off the elevator, walked down a quiet hallway, and stopped in front of a door with a small decorative wreath hanging on it. Lila lifted her hand to knock but paused. She glanced at Rowan. "Ready?" she whispered. He nodded, though she could tell he was nervous. She knocked gently. A few seconds later, the door opened and Aaron appeared with a wide, warm smile. "You made it. Come in." The smell of food drifted out into the hallway, comforting and inviting. Rowan stepped behind Lila a little, but he peeked up at Aaron curiously. "And this must be Rowan," Aaron said kindly, lowering himself a bit so he wasn't towering over the boy. "I'm really glad you could come." Rowan gave a tiny nod. "Hi." His voice was soft, almost shy. "Come on in," Aaron said. "Everyone's in the living room. You'll like them." The apartment was warm, decorated with soft lights and candles. There was gentle music playing in the background, and voices drifted from the other room. Rowan stayed close to Lila as they walked in. The other guests looked up when they entered. A few smiled warmly, and one woman waved at Rowan. "Hi there," she said. "You must be Lila's son." Rowan pressed closer to Lila's side but managed a small wave. Lila gave him an encouraging squeeze on the shoulder. The room was filled with friendly faces, and everyone greeted them with kindness. Lila felt the tension in her shoulders start to ease. Nothing felt forced. No one looked uncomfortable about having a child there. If anything, they seemed curious, welcoming. Aaron brought out some snacks and placed a small bowl of fruit in front of Rowan. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I made sure to have a bit of everything," he said. Rowan looked at him with surprise. "You've got these for me?" "Of course," Aaron replied. "Guests should feel at home." Slowly, Rowan relaxed. He took a piece of fruit, ate it quietly, and looked around the room with calmer eyes. Lila watched him and smiled softly. The fear she had felt earlier began to fade. As the evening went on, Rowan started asking small questions about the music, about the plants in the room, about the food. His curiosity grew stronger once he felt safe. The adults answered him kindly, even laughing at a few of his innocent observations. At one point, he pointed at a large painting on the wall and asked, "Why does that person look sad?" The guests chuckled, and one man explained the meaning behind the painting. Rowan listened intently, nodding as though he understood every word. Lila watched all this quietly. She wasn't used to seeing her son interact with adults so comfortably. It made her heart warm to see him open up, little by little. Aaron came over and stood beside her. "He's a good kid," he said quietly. Lila smiled. "He is. He's just shy at first. A lot of us are," Aaron said. "I'm really glad you brought him." "I meant it," she nodded, appreciating the sincerity in his tone. When dinner was finally served, Rowan sat beside her at the long table. The food looked beautiful, simple but elegant dishes. Warm bread, vegetables, seasoned perfectly. And a main course that filled the room with delicious aroma. Rowan leaned toward her. "It smells so good. Try a little of everything," she whispered. As the meal began, Rowan surprised her. He asked questions about the dishes, commented on the flavors, and even thanked Aaron for the food. His manners, which she had tried so hard to teach him over the years, came out naturally. People seemed genuinely charmed by him. One woman leaned forward and said, "You're very polite. How old are you?" 8, he said proudly. Lila felt a wave of pride wash over her. She had worried so much about how he would behave, how he would fit into a room full of adults. But here he was comfortable, curious, and respectful. Even when he got a little restless, he stayed calm. He tapped his foot lightly under the table, played with his napkin, and whispered questions to her occasionally. Got nothing that disturbed anyone. After dinner, people moved back to the living room. Rowan found a small puzzle game on a shelf and asked if he could play with it. Aaron nodded, even helping him find all the pieces. Soon Rowan was sitting on the floor, putting the puzzle together while the adults chatted nearby. Lila sat on the couch, watching him. For the first time that evening, she felt her nerves completely settle. Aaron sat beside her. "He fits in well," he said quietly. "Thank you for welcoming him," she replied. "It means a lot." "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I meant every word I said. I wanted to meet him." "I'm glad you asked." She looked at Rowan again, and her heart warmed. The question she had worried so much about, "May I bring my son?" had led to a night far better than she expected. And it wasn't even over yet. The evening had settled into a calm rhythm. Lila sat on the couch, watching Rowan play with the puzzle game on the living room floor. She had expected a quiet dinner, perhaps a few polite smiles and small talk, but this was different. Rowan had found a comfortable place among the adults, moving from shy glances to bold questions, sharing little insights about himself without even realizing it. One of the guests, a woman named Claire, sat nearby with a cup of tea. She smiled at Rowan and asked, "Do you like drawing?" Rowan nodded eagerly. "Yes, I draw almost every day. I even made a comic once." "A comic? That sounds exciting," Claire said. "Can you tell me about it?" Rowan jumped up and went over to the small table by the window. He grabbed a notebook from his backpack and brought it back, laying it on the coffee table. With wide eyes, he began explaining his story, a tale of a superhero who could talk to animals. He described the characters, the adventures, and even the villains he had imagined. The adults listened quietly, impressed with his creativity and enthusiasm. Lila watched him, heart swelling. She realized that these moments were rare. Seeing Rowan share something he loved so freely and having others genuinely listen was something special. She had worried that he might feel out of place, that his questions or excitement might annoy people, but here he was being embraced. Aaron came over and crouched down beside Rowan. "This is amazing," he said. "You have a great imagination. I wish I could have thought of something like this when I was your age." Rowan beamed at the praise. "Do you want to see the villains?" he asked. Aaron nodded. Rowan opened the notebook to a page full of bold, colorful drawings. He pointed out the villains, explaining their powers and personalities. The other guests gathered around, asking questions and complimenting him. Leela felt a little emotional. She had expected polite tolerance, but instead, she saw curiosity, interest, and respect. As the night continued, Rowan moved comfortably around the room. He asked about the music playing, commenting on how some instruments sounded like they were talking to each other. He asked Aaron about the plants, fascinated by the variety of leaves and flowers. Each question was met with patience and warmth, and Lila could see her son's confidence growing with every answer. At one point, he noticed a small dog sleeping in the corner. Rowan tiptoed over, gently touching the dog's fur. The dog stirred, wagged its tail, and licked his hand. Lila watched, smiling. She had often worried that Rowan's curiosity might get him into trouble or cause disruption. But now it seemed like his curiosity was being rewarded with kindness. The adults in the room began to share stories of their own childhoods, prompted by Rowan's questions. Aaron told a story about a tree house he had built with his siblings. And Claire recounted a summer she had spent exploring the woods near her grandparents' house. Rowan listened intently, asking follow-up questions, and even relating some of the stories to his own experiences. The conversation flowed naturally, the boundaries between adult and child softening as Rowan's presence brought new energy into the room. Leela felt a sense of relief she hadn't anticipated. All her worries about being judged, about Rowan being a burden, about awkwardness, were melting away. She realized that this evening wasn't just about her being a guest. It was about sharing her world with her son and allowing him to shine in his own way. After a while, Aaron suggested a small game. He brought out a set of cards and explained the rules for a memory game. Rowan's eyes lit up. He loved games and was quick to learn the rules. Soon, the room was filled with laughter as Rowan and the adults played together. He made mistakes, of course, but they were met with encouragement rather than criticism. He cheered when someone else won and accepted help when he needed it. Leela couldn't stop smiling at how naturally he fit in. As the game ended, Aaron clapped his hands. "I think we all need a break from competition," he said. He gestured toward the kitchen. "Dessert is ready." Rowan's face lit up, and he ran to the kitchen with Lila close behind. The desserts looked delightful: fruit tarts, chocolate brownies, and a small cake with candles on top. Rowan chose a small tart, carefully balancing it on his plate. They returned to the living room, and Rowan found a comfortable spot on the rug to eat. He glanced at Lila and whispered, "This is really nice. I like it here." Her heart lifted. "I'm glad, sweetheart. I think everyone likes having you here too." After dessert, the adults started talking quietly and Rowan moved closer to Lila again. He leaned his head against her shoulder for a moment, resting while listening to the conversations around him. She wrapped an arm around him, feeling a mix of pride and relief. The night was unfolding better than she could have imagined. Aaron came over once more and knelt beside her. "I have to say, Rowan has really brought something special to tonight," he said. "I wasn't sure what it would be like having a child here, but he's reminded all of us how fun and interesting things can be when seen through a kid's eyes." Lila smiled, touched by his words. "Thank you for saying that. I was nervous about asking. I didn't want him to feel out of place." Aaron shook his head. "No need. He belongs here as much as anyone else. And honestly, it's been a wonderful surprise having him." Rowan, overhearing this, blushed and ducked his head. Lila gave him a reassuring squeeze. "See? They like you just like I said." The night continued with stories, laughter, and small discoveries. Rowan's curiosity never waned, and the adults' patience and interest never faltered. Lila found herself more relaxed than she had been in a long time. She realized that part of her fear had been unnecessary. She had been worried about judgment. But the kindness she and Rowan experienced was genuine. As the clock moved later, people began to say their goodbyes. Aaron hugged Lila, thanking her again for bringing Rowan. The other guests waved and said goodnight to the boy, who responded with shy but confident waves of his own. Lila felt a deep sense of gratitude for the warmth and acceptance they had encountered. Walking back to their apartment, Attila held Rowan's hand tightly. "You did so well tonight," she said softly. "I liked it," he said quietly. "I didn't know everyone would be so nice." "Me neither," she admitted. "But I'm glad they were, and I'm glad you came with me." They walked through the quiet streets, the cool night air wrapping around them. Rowan hummed softly, tired but happy. Lila felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The evening had been more than just a dinner. It had been a moment of connection, understanding, and mutual respect. Once they reached their apartment, Rowan yawned widely. Lila carried him inside, kissed his forehead, and tucked him into bed. She sat beside him for a few moments, watching him drift off to sleep. The events of the evening replayed in her mind, each small moment bringing a sense of warmth and satisfaction. She realized that this night was more than a simple dinner. It had been a lesson in trust, patience, and the joy of being genuine. She had worried, overthought, and feared rejection, but the reality had been completely different. Her son had been welcomed, celebrated even, and she had witnessed firsthand the magic that happens when people open their hearts to one another. Sitting back in the living room after tucking Rowan in, Lila felt a quiet sense of accomplishment and relief. She knew that evenings like this didn't happen often, but when they did, they left lasting impressions. And tonight had left a very special one on both her and her son. The next morning, Lila woke up with a sense of calm that she hadn't felt in a long time. Rowan was still asleep in his bed, curled under his blanket, and she paused for a moment to watch him. The night before had been more than she could have hoped for. Her fears had melted away, replaced with a quiet pride in how Rowan had handled himself and in the way the adults had welcomed him. She felt lighter, as if a weight she hadn't even noticed was finally gone. After breakfast, Rowan sat at the table, flipping through his notebook filled with drawings. He pointed to one of his sketches and said, "Mom, do you think Aaron will like this?" Lila smiled, taking a closer look. The drawing was of his superhero with animals, rescuing people from a storm. "I think he'll love it," she said. "Everyone seemed really interested in what you shared." Rowan nodded, his eyes wide. It was fun talking to them. "I liked asking questions and hearing their stories." Lila felt warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad you felt that way. You made the night special." Throughout the day, Lila found herself thinking back to moments from the dinner, replaying them in her mind. She remembered how patient the adults had been, how genuinely interested they seemed in Rowan's ideas. It was a rare thing, she realized, a space where her child could be himself and be appreciated for it. Instead of being judged or dismissed, she called Aaron later in the afternoon. Wanting to thank him again for the previous night, he answered warmly, and they talked about the evening, laughing over small moments and sharing memories. Lila mentioned how nervous she had been to ask about bringing Rowan, and Aaron reassured her again that her son had been a joy to have there. It wasn't just a polite thing to say. Aaron said, "He brought energy, curiosity, and imagination. It reminded all of us what it's like to see the world through a child's eyes. Honestly, it was a highlight for me." Lila felt a mix of gratitude and surprise. She hadn't expected that. She had feared judgment, doubt, and awkwardness. Instead, she had experienced acceptance, warmth, and genuine appreciation. It was more than a dinner. It was a lesson in how openness and kindness could create connection. After hanging up, Lila sat with Rowan again, talking about the stories he had heard, the questions he had asked, and the little games they had played. They laughed together, remembering silly moments when Rowan had mispronounced a word or when an adult had answered one of his curious questions with playful humor. The room seemed to glow with memory and joy as the afternoon went on. Lila reflected on how much she had underestimated people before. Her worries about judgment had been valid in some situations. She admitted to herself, but she had forgotten that sometimes people surprise you with their warmth. She thought about the adults at the dinner, how they had shared their stories, how they had played with Rowan, how they had genuinely listened. It had reminded her that kindness often went further than she gave it credit for. Later, she took Rowan outside for a walk. The streets were quiet, the soft hum of city life around them. Rowan skipped ahead a little, turning back to check if Lila was following, his laughter light and carefree. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had experienced something important, something that would stay with him. And in a way, it had affected her too. On the walk, Rowan asked questions about everything they passed, the flowers and the sidewalk planters, the way a bird landed on a fence, even the reflections in the puddles left from the morning rain. Lila answered patiently, enjoying the way his mind worked. It reminded her that curiosity was a gift, one that her son carried naturally. It shouldn't be hidden or feared. That evening, as they returned home, Lila found herself thinking about the larger picture. She realized that asking one simple question, "May I bring my son?" had opened a door not just for Rowan, but for herself too. It had reminded her that fear could hold her back, but courage, sometimes small, sometimes quiet, could lead to unexpected joy and connection. They had dinner at home, simple and comforting, and Rowan talked about the evening again, retelling stories to his own excitement. Lila listened, smiling, and occasionally asking questions to encourage him to share more. She noticed how much his confidence had grown, how much he had learned about speaking with others, about expressing himself, and about navigating new experiences. After Rowan went to bed, Lila sat in the living room, reflecting. She thought about all the times she had hesitated to ask for help, to include her son, or to step outside her comfort zone. She realized that much of her fear had been about judgment. But experiences like last night proved that openness could create unexpected beauty. She thought again about Aaron's words, that Rowan had reminded them all of the joy of seeing life through a child's eyes. It struck her how true that was. As adults, it was easy to get caught up in routines, stress, and expectations. But children, with their curiosity and honesty, had a way of reminding people of the simple joys of wonder and imagination. Lila decided to write a note to Aaron, just a small message of thanks. She told him how meaningful the evening had been, how much she appreciated the warmth and acceptance they had shown Rowan, and how it had reminded her of the value of courage and trust. She sent the message and felt a sense of closure mixed with gratitude. As the days passed, Lila noticed subtle changes in Rowan. He seemed a little more confident, a little more willing to speak up, a little more open to new experiences. She encouraged him to share his stories with neighbors, with friends, and with relatives. And each time he did, she felt proud, remembering the night when a simple question had led to such growth and connection. Lila also noticed changes in herself. She found herself more willing to ask questions, to take small risks, to open doors that she might have hesitated to approach before. She understood that growth, for both herself and her son, came from these little moments of courage and trust. One afternoon, she reflected on the experience with a friend over coffee. She described the dinner, Rowan's interactions, the stories shared, and the lessons learned. Her friend listened with interest, and when she finished, she said, "You see, sometimes the things we fear most turn out to be the most rewarding." And it wasn't just about the dinner. It was about giving Rowan a space to be himself and trusting the world to receive him with kindness. Lila nodded, feeling the truth of the statement. She realized that life had a way of teaching lessons in unexpected ways. A small invitation, a simple yes, and the willingness to step into the unknown had created a memory that would stay with both her and her son for years to come. As the evening came to a close, Lila tucked Rowan into bed once more. He whispered a sleepy, "Thanks, Mom, for letting me go," before drifting off. She watched him, feeling a quiet pride and a deep love. The night had been more than a dinner. It had been a reminder that courage, trust, and kindness could lead to experiences that transformed not just children, but adults too. Lila sat in the living room, reflecting on the lessons of the past days. She thought about fear, trust, courage, and connection. She thought about how much a single question asked with vulnerability and care could change everything. And she felt grateful, not just for the night, not just for the people who had welcomed them, but for the reminder that stepping forward, even with uncertainty, could open the door to unexpected joy and growth. The following weekend, Lila and Rowan decided to take a small trip to the park. It was a sunny day, with gentle warmth in the air and a soft breeze rustling the leaves of the trees. Rowan ran ahead, stopping occasionally to watch a squirrel or pick up a particularly interesting leaf. Lila walked slowly behind him, enjoying the freedom of a day without schedules, deadlines, or obligations. As she watched him, she thought back to the dinner party. That one night had left a strong impression on both of them. Rowan had gained confidence, and she had gained perspective. It had been a reminder of the value of trust, courage, and kindness. The dinner had been more than just an event. It had been a lesson in life, one she hoped Rowan would carry with him forever. Rowan returned with a stick he had found, waving it like a tiny sword. "Look, Mom, I'm an explorer." Leela laughed. "Be careful, Rowan. Don't hurt anyone or yourself." He nodded solemnly, taking care to keep the stick pointing away from her and other children playing nearby. He paused for a moment and then asked, "Mom, do you think people are usually nice if you give them a chance?" She considered his question. It was a thoughtful one, and it made her reflect on the past few days. "I think many people are, yes. But sometimes we have to be brave and take a chance, like we did the other night. Sometimes it's worth it to trust someone and see what happens." Rowan smiled and ran off again, feeling like he had learned a small secret about the world as they continued through the park. Leela noticed how much he had grown in just a few days. He spoke with more confidence, asked questions freely, and seemed to enjoy interactions with others without hesitation. She realized that experiences like the dinner party had shaped him, giving him a sense of belonging and acceptance. It reminded her that children thrived when given opportunities and when trusted to navigate social situations with guidance. They found a quiet bench near a small pond. Rowan sat down and tossed small pebbles into the water, watching the ripples spread out. Lila joined him, picking up a few pebbles herself, and watched the water dance with each throw. It was a simple moment, but one full of meaning and reflection. "Mom, can we have more nights like the dinner?" Rowan asked softly. "We can," Lila said, squeezing his shoulder gently. "We just have to be open to them, just like we were before." Rohan nodded. "I liked seeing everyone smile at my stories. I didn't think anyone would care about the things I think about." "They cared," Lila said. "And they would care again because you have wonderful ideas. You're a thoughtful, curious, and kind boy. That's something people notice, even if they don't say it every day." Rowan smiled, tossing another pebble into the pond. Lila watched him, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She realized that parenting wasn't just about protecting and teaching. It was about giving space, trusting, and witnessing growth. That night at the dinner party had given her a concrete example of what that looked like. Later, as they walked home, Rowan chattered about small adventures and new ideas for stories he wanted to draw. Leela listened, asked questions, and encouraged him. She noticed how much more willing he was to share his thoughts, to engage with the world, and to feel confident in his own skin. It was a small transformation, but one she knew would have lasting effects. Back at their apartment, Lila began preparing a simple dinner. Rowan helped by setting the table, arranging utensils and napkins carefully. He looked proud of his task, and she praised him gently. "You're really good at this, Rowan. It looks perfect." He grinned. "I learned from last night," he said. "I saw how everyone helped each other and made the dinner special. I want to do that too." Lila felt a wave of pride. His ability to observe, reflect, and adapt had clearly grown. It was remarkable how one experience could shape a child's understanding of interaction, empathy, and care. After dinner, they sat together on the couch. Rowan leaned against her, resting his head on her shoulder. She wrapped an arm around him, feeling the warmth of the moment. It was quiet, calm, and comfortable, the kind of peace that followed a meaningful day. "Mom, do you think we'll always have adventures like that dinner party?" he asked. "I hope so," she said softly. "We have to look for them, though. Sometimes adventures don't just come to us, we go out and find them." Rowan's eyes sparkled. "I want to find more. I want to meet new people and learn new things." Lila smiled, realizing that this was more than just excitement for fun. He had learned the value of courage, curiosity, and connection. That was the real lesson of the night. It would carry with him far beyond childhood. As bedtime approached, Leela read a story to Rowan, a new one he had chosen from his bookshelf. He listened intently, asking questions and commenting on details. After the story, he curled up in bed and she tucked him in. "Good night, Rowan," she whispered. "Night, Mom," he replied. "Thank you for bringing me last night. I liked it more than I expected." Her heart warmed. "I'm glad, sweetheart. I'm glad you were there." She turned off the light and closed the door softly, sitting in the quiet apartment for a few minutes. She reflected on the journey they had taken together, from hesitation and fear to confidence and joy. The question she had asked, "May I bring my son?" had been small in words but enormous in impact. It had opened doors, created memories, and taught lessons about trust, acceptance, and the beauty of connection in the following days. Lila noticed that Rowan spoke more confidently to neighbors, shared his drawings without hesitation, and approached new experiences with curiosity instead of fear. She also felt a shift in herself. She found herself more willing to reach out, to ask for help, and to trust that the world could respond with kindness. One afternoon, she reflected on the entire experience, realizing that the dinner party had been more than a social gathering. It had been a reminder of how life could surprise you when you approached it with courage and trust. It had shown her that children, when supported and welcomed, could flourish in ways that adults often underestimated. It had also reminded her of the importance of human connection, patience, and genuine kindness. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, moments of fear, and opportunities to doubt. But she also knew that those moments could be met with openness and trust. The night at the dinner had been a lesson that would stay with her and Rowan, shaping their interactions with others and reinforcing the value of courage, curiosity, and heartfelt connection. As she prepared for the coming week, Lila felt a renewed sense of hope and confidence. She understood that parenting was not just about guiding a child through the world, but also about being open to lessons, surprises, and the joy that came from trusting both her own instincts and her child's abilities. And she knew that the simple question she had asked, the one that had started it, all would remain a powerful reminder of how one moment, one choice, and one act of courage could change everything for the better.